Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit, Eneye EGUA da, Medinde Ojirafo, Kwesi Ra Nehempata Akan. Aquamumaina Marukai Tifimu Ojirafo. That means greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is EGUA Day, Marketplace Day. My name is Ojirafo, Kwesi Ra Nehempata Akan, Ojirafo of the Aquamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in once again to our broadcast. This, of course, is our third broadcast of the week. We have 3 broadcasts weekly. On Joada, we have Akanfo NANASOM, Ancient, Authentic, Akan, Ancestral Religion. On Benada, or Abenada, Tuesday, we have Ojira, which means purification. We deal with various aspects of NANASOM, Ancient, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion and Culture, and Nation Building, dealing with ancient texts from Kemet and how those texts and ritual practices are relevant to what we are experiencing today in our current activities, and a great deal of information. Then Awukuda or Akuada, which is Wednesday, we have EGUA Marketplace. We showcase businesses, products, and services provided by Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the community that benefit our community, but also who share our ancestral values in the process. We've had a number of individuals on. We've had naturopaths like Dr. Afivi Adiro. We have people who engage in, have homeschooling networks such as Njideka Karmo and Mama Mawusi Ashakir. Had educators like Dr. Iya Ajwa, had Brother Kamal Makefi Tahuti, who's an author, also a host on Blog Talk Radio. Had Coach Bilal Sankofa, dealing with our people in the human services field, but he just beyond that. We had a number of different guests, and we had a guest for tonight, but we're going to have to push. It was kind of short notice, so we're going to have to pick that back up next week. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about products and services. So what we're going to talk about is one of our services in Aquamu Mine, Marukai Tifimu, the Aquamu Nation in North America. When you look on our website, ojirafo.com, ODWIRA, you'll see that we have a number of products, a number of services, and we talk about those. We've had a few shows where we talked about specific services, specific products. So tonight we're going to focus on one of our major services. So first, let me place the website in the chat room. If you are in the chat room and you want to communicate, you must log into the chat room. And then on the phone line, if you have a question or a comment, of course, you have to just hit the number 1, and then we can see that your hand is raised. We can call on you. So we just placed the link to the website, to the GUAMU KASA page in the chat room. That's ODWIRA.com/GUAMU, GUAMUKASA.html. So that's ojirafo.com/GUAMUKASA.html. We're also going to put the link to one of our publications that we're going to discuss in the context of GUAMU KASA. We're going to put that link in right now. For those who are not in the chat room, but maybe listening by phone, this is the specific text, which you can find this on the regular website, ojirafo.com website, on the index page. As you scroll all the way down past the products and services, we have a number of our publications, more recent publications there. It's called Ocheyame Uhime or Ohima, Spokesperson of the Sacred. That particular document, we just put the link there. We're going to go through that information that's directly related to the topic we're talking about tonight. So you can download that. It's just a few pages, and we're going to get into some detail about that. All right, I just want to make sure there weren't any messages that we had to answer real quick. I know a couple of people needed to see, had a couple of questions. We're looking through that. All right, so first we will go to the GUAMU KASA page. So we have a number of products and services. Hold on, I think the link was, let me make sure the right link is there first. GUAMU KASA. Okay, so let's see if that's, okay, something up with the way it's getting into the chat room on Facebook, on Blog Talk. Okay, so it's something wrong with the links for some reason as we post them in Blog Talk. But just for those who know, you can, it is guamukasa.html. So ojirapo.com, ODWIRA, F is in free, o.com /GUAMU, GUAMU KASA, KASA, it's all one word, .html. For some reason it's not fully, okay, the link just went in properly. Okay, so you can see that. So we're going to go to the page. So out of our products and services, for example, we have our publication. So we have 18 books, and we talked about this last night as well. Out of the 18 books, all of them are available in the ebook format on the website, on our ojirapo.com website. The ebook versions of our books are all free downloads. Out of the 18 books, all of them are in ebook, but then we also have 13 out of the 18. Eventually we'll have all 18, but right now we have 13 out of the 18 that are not only available as ebook downloads, but then we have free ebook downloads, but we also have 13 of them available in soft cover. So we print our own books on our own printers in-house and in color, and we sell those soft covers. So the ebook versions of the books are free. The soft cover versions that we sell, that we print in color, we do charge for those. They only range between $8 and $11. So we have one of our books is $8, 6 of them are $9, 5 of them are $10, and one of them is $11 at this point. We do have more publications that we are working on and will be releasing very soon. The most recent set of 3 publications that we released in soft cover was 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago, September 20th, in the midst of our 7-day New Year celebration, Ojira celebration, Obrajira celebration, which was between September 16th and September 22nd. And of course, September 22nd for us, for the Akwamu Mai, Amaroka Itifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America. September 21st, the first full day of Atimet, or autumn. That's our New Year's Day, the first day of 13,015. Of course, we do not calculate time based on a fictional cartoon character who never existed, Jesus. So we don't use 2014 or 2015. We're in the midst of the Afe Kesie 26,000-year cycle, which is an astronomical cycle that can be calculated and charted. We're in the midst of that cycle, hence the year is beginning with 13,000. So this is starting September 22nd. That was the first day of 13,015. So in the midst of our 7-day New Year observance, we were still working. We didn't do any broadcasts during that period. That was the first time we had taken off from doing broadcasts since the end of May when we started. And during that period, even though we weren't broadcasting, we were still working. So we did release 3 new publications on September 20th. The publications we released were Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. So we proved conclusively, and we're the first to show this information, that the term yoga, typically defined as meaning to yoke, coming from the Proto-Indo-European root yonk, meaning to bind or to yoke and so forth. That term yonk in Proto-Indo-European so-called, the Proto-Indo-European positive so-called language family actually comes from yonk or onk, and we go into detail to show that. Whites and offspring learned of that word from our people. They didn't understand the basis of it, so they just repeat it, put it in their language, and then claimed it as their own. Now they claim it as a Proto-Indo-European word, which in reality it is not. So stealing words, stealing concepts, and so forth, which they do not understand. We show the actual Medutu, the hieroglyphics, proving that that term is Ankh, meaning life, but it also, when you look at the word for spirit, Sahu, you'll see the animal, the goat, with the Ankh around its neck in the form of what is typically called a yoke. So the spirit, the term for spirit, Sahu, is represented by the animal, the animating force, with the Ankh around its neck, a symbol of life around its neck. Also, one of the ways to spell the term Ankh is the goat with the Ankh around its neck. So there's a reason why that which is around the neck in that form, the Ankh, is a life symbol. It's a union, the Ankh is a yoke, or it's a symbol, or unifies the spirit and the soul, the Ba and the Ka, the divine living spirit and the divine consciousness. The life principle unifies those within the spirit body. That's why it's a quote-unquote, it's wrapped around the neck in the form of a quote-unquote yoke. So we go into detail about that. We prove that. We also show that kakra or chakra is a corruption of the term karakra from ancient Kemet. And we show the cosmology, which, of course, no Europeans have ever put that information forward. They didn't have that information. And that also includes individuals who had been teaching various forms of African-centered yoga and various, different forms of that. Some of our people recognize that the various postures that you see will be found in ancient Kemet, so they realized that there was something that had been stolen, but they didn't have the detailed information. We put that information out about yoga and chakras and so forth. And also showing in the Medutu the various movements that form what they would call Qigong. Even the term Qi is a title of Ra. So we go into detail about that. We also publish Odomankoma, Atumukopa, and Trejuampong, which is Atem and Kepra. We show who these divinities actually are in the Akan tradition, as well as in ancient Kemet, the same divinities by the same name, and showing their relationship, Atem and Kepra, to Ra. Ra, Atem, and Kepra are three different divinities. Atem and Kepra are servants of and subordinate to Ra and Ra'et. So we go into detail about that. And then we also have the book Inyokumpon, Ra and Ra'et. So we're showing who Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress are. And in the Akan tradition, they're called typically Nrane, Inyokumpon, and Inyokuntong, the full descriptive titles of these two divinities. So those three books we released on September 20th. And then we have the other 10 books as well. So that's one major aspect of the products that we put forward. We also have over 60 articles that we have published in addition to the 18 books. All of those articles are available online, free downloads. We have about 49 videos on our YouTube channel. The link, of course, is on our website. Most of those videos, about 2 hours each, where we examine various publications that we have released, and we go into detail, clarifying different points and giving even additional information. So those videos, of course, are free downloads as well. We have over 42 broadcasts of archives of the Blog Talk Radio broadcasts. Most of those shows range between 2 and 3 hours. So we have close to 100 hours of information from our Blog Talk broadcast, of course, that also, and where we examine our publications as well as other information in detail, that's accessible as well. These are different products, but we also have services. Some of the services you'll see on the website, Akumasa, which is dealing with substance abuse abstinence in the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community, we have within our own culture the capacity to utilize our ritual practices to overcome the addictions to illicit substances. So overcoming addictions to alcohol and cigarettes and marijuana and these various self-destructive behaviors. We don't have to go outside of our ancestral culture to deal with these things. We can engage ritual practices to do so. So GUAMU KASA, substance abuse abstinence service, we have that ritual method that we call the ritual method to overcome substance abuse, and many individuals have overcome their addictions through engaging that ritual process. It includes a number of different things, but it's pretty simple, and that's one of the services. Afurakani is another related service. Through the practice of our Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral religious practices, we can overcome the negative effects and the negative motivations that keep us get trapped in, and continue to operate within domestic abuse situations. People have suffered from domestic abuse. They're still controlled spiritually in a certain sense, mentally, emotionally. How to break free from that, overcome that, and not put yourself in that same position again, and heal from that. We have the capacity to deal with that within our culture. Everything we need to deal with our issues we have within our culture. We don't have to go to psychologists or therapists or psychiatrists getting medications and all of this nonsense. We have everything we need within our culture. So we have that. We also have the Akuma Chora, which is trauma, recovery, alignment. We're talking about overcoming transcarnational trauma as well as intergenerational trauma, some of the things that we engage in, our children engage in, negative behaviors and so forth. Again, you don't have to go to a therapist, psychologist, social worker, case manager, and so forth. You can deal with the issues that are controlling the minds and behavior of our people. Very often there are issues dealing with unresolved ancestral spirits, Samanfo, that are influencing the individual. Very often you have things that the individual never healed from in the past. If you get a cut and you don't allow the natural process to take place and the scab to come over the cut, the scab, of course, is black because it's, contains melanin, abatum. It becomes a natural Band-Aid, so that blackness is healing you, protecting the open wound from further infection while healing it at the same time. If you don't allow that process to continue and you pull the scab off and keep exposing the wound, then you're going to constantly have infection. When people engage in disorder behavior, they open up a wound within their own spirit body, within their aura, within their kahibit, as it's called in Nature Kemet. When people make their transition, when they die, and the spirit leaves the body, and they haven't done the spiritual work, the wound is still open. It's not closed. You don't become a quote-unquote angel all of a sudden. So, of course, they don't exist. So you have very often people who make their transition, parent, grandparent, uncle, aunt. When the spirit leaves the body, they're still distressed. They may have been killed, murdered, died of a disease or whatever. They're still distressed, full of anxiety, upset about the fact that they left the world in the manner that they did. And instead of making a smooth transition to the ancestral realm, what ends up happening is they become earthbound. They're still so pulled in a gravitational fashion, still stuck to this region, still hanging around the family, still hanging around the place, their spirit hanging around the place where they were killed or where they died or the house they died in, and people, whether they're young people, little kids, or other adults who are receptive, they can see the spirit in the house sometimes or feel the spirit walking by or feel some anxiety because that spirit's anxiety is still with them and they're still hanging around, and that spirit is still distressed. And that kind of individual, when they reincarnate and come back into the womb, they still have that open wound. And just like an open wound draws infection and doesn't repel bacteria, such an individual, when they come back into the world, they still have an open wound and they are open. So they're still open to infection. They never did anything ritually or spiritually to heal themselves to the extent that they needed to move forward. So they're constantly attracting bacteria, a negative type, viral type people, having negative things happen to them and so forth, because they never got back on track. They were still in disalignment from the kind of behavior they engaged in previously. It wasn't healed. You don't just, as soon as you make a transition, all of a sudden you get a clean slate. Everything that happened in the past is over, and you're just a pure spirit. You're the same individual who was returned. And if you didn't do the spiritual work while you were in the spiritual realm to help realign yourself, and you come back into the world and you're still open like that. So we have a culture. That's one of the reasons we have culture. We have funerary practices to help those spirits who make their transition, those asunsum, when they make their transition, to help usher them to the ancestral realm so they can get back in harmony and get themselves together. If they don't engage that process, they return into the world. They're still open. They still have an open wound in their kahibet, their aura, their spirit body, and they're attractive to negative individuals, negative people. They can't understand why they keep feeling drawn back to the same kind of people who will abuse them. They don't like being abused, but then they still end up finding themselves in those same situations and suffering in those situations, children suffering in those situations, and various other things, engaging in negative behaviors like drug use and everything else. So when you understand that, you can reverse that process. You can close up that wound through the practice of our culture. Everything we need is within our culture. You don't need sitting around in therapy for years and all this other nonsense. So that akuma, trauma, recovery, alignment, that's a service. Of course, these are free services. Also, we have adebisa, divination. We had to do a moratorium on the divination recently because over the past number of months we had so many requests that we couldn't catch up. We didn't want people just sitting, waiting, so we're going to eventually drop the moratorium, and we'll announce that. But that is another free service. When we get that back up and running, that's another free service. We do not charge for adebisa. We do not charge for divination. Of course, we have the article, Abosom, Orisha, Vodou, do not ask for money, and you can read that article. Of course, we have a video, about a 2.5-hour video, dealing with adebisa, divination, with Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in America. So these free services. One of the other free services that we have is GUAMU KASA. So, which is the subject for tonight. So GUAMU KASA, GUAMU means the public. In the Akan tradition, KASA means speech, or to speak, or to communicate, and so forth. So GUAMU KASA means public speaking, public speech. And on the page, we say, of course, and when you look on the page, it just says, it gives the definition, says we are available to conduct workshops, trainings, and of course, we've worked in the field of behavioral health for a number of years, doing trainings, dealing with youth and adults on a number of different things. We've talked about the Sankofa Juma training that we had, helping social service workers, human services agents, social workers, case managers, therapists, psychologists, and so forth, how to incorporate culture when they're dealing with their clients and convey that information in a systematic fashion, also helping organizations to be able to include that kind of information when they're drawing up treatment plans, drafting progress notes, encounter notes, to effectively capture interventions and utilizing interventions that are actually effective, rooted in culture, but also can pass the muster with regard to funding sources as well. So we have trainings for that as well. So it says we are available to conduct workshops, trainings, and presentations in your city or village on the various topics covered in our audio, video, and written publications, inclusive of NANASOM, Amamre, and Amaisesu, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African, Ancestral Religion, Culture, and Nation Building. We mentioned to see the websites. We have both websites, the sankopajuma.com website, dealing with the piece with behavioral health, human services professionals, teaching them how to incorporate culture. And we have a Afura Whole Life Interventions model, which shows human service agents how to incorporate culture in a specific fashion, in an effective fashion. We have a model the Afura Whole Life Interventions model based on the positions of the sun, how to introduce this information to clients who have never been introduced to any African religion, culture, or anything like that, introduce it to them in a way that's introductory, that they can embrace, even if they were totally against anything African, totally against anything cultural, totally against any of that. The way we introduce the information, the manner in which we do that is in a way that even individuals like that are very open to it, even if they were against it all of their lives, because of the way that we introduce it. So we have a interventions model to teach human service agents how to engage that process. That's on the sankofajuma.com website, which is different, which is separate from the ojirafo.com website. So we have both links on our page. And then we talked about, later on the page, we show one of the things that we stipulate when we travel to conduct workshops, trainings, give presentations to large audiences as well as small study groups. We stipulate that when scheduling an event in your city, it is important that attendees are not charged admission or a registration fee to attend. Our people must be able to attend these events for free. And also, of course, our events are for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. And we also do not charge a speaker's fee to organizers of events. What we have done over the past year when we've gone to different cities, we've been able to give away one of our books, one of our softcover books, a free copy to everyone who's attended a workshop or presentation. So we've given away about over 350 softcover books over the past 12 months. We're going to continue that process. That's part of what we do. If people come to an event, they should not be charged to learn about ancestral culture, religion, and nation building. And when they come to the event, they walk away with a free copy of one of our publications. So they walk away with something. Even if they don't have funds, they can still get this information. Of course, the PDF versions, ebook versions of all of our books and everything is free anyway. If people don't have access to the internet or don't have access to printers where they can download the information, and it's a great deal of information, but they do come to a presentation, they can walk away with at least a free copy of one of our publications so they can get started reorienting themselves to their culture and getting things back on track and allowing that reorientation to spread and affect the way they order their lives in a more harmonious fashion. So over the past 12 months, we've been to a number of different places. We've been to Philadelphia a number of times, Houston, Wilmington, Delaware, Dallas, Virginia, Tennessee, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Maryland, Virginia, a number of different places. We're working on the schedule for the next few weeks leading up into the winter solstice, the name period. So we're working on the schedule for October, the rest of October, November, and December. If you would like us to come to your region, just hit us up via email, on Facebook, or on our website and so forth. As you look at the GUAMU KASA page, and you look at even just the introduction, when we're talking about the introduction to tonight's lecture, we're talking about the way that we convey information. There's a specific purpose. There's a purpose for public speech. Things have been quite corrupted. Ever since the whites in our offspring have designated the preacher during the enslavement process to be the quote-unquote leader of the slaves, to pacify them, make them docile slaves and teach the Bible, to make the people docile slaves, to control the people and make them not want to escape and not want to kill the whites in our offspring, which we should have been doing. Ever since that process began here in the West, and there's been a great deal of nonsense going along with the notion of public speech or public speaking. And it's no longer become a service for us. GUAMU KASA, in the Akan tradition, GUAMU meaning the public square, the public arena, and KASA meaning speech. That is a service to the community. It's a totally different concept than just going around stirring up people's emotions, preaching, and trying to manipulate the minds of people so that you can get things out of people like money, sex, prestige, positions and other kinds of nonsense. We're talking about a totally different concept. So in order to give some more detailed information about that concept, you look at the document that we're posting. We posted in the chat room. This document we published, Ochiame Uhime, spokesperson of the sacred. And what you'll see is the image of Yabosom Tehuti holding his two staffs, and then next to him you'll see a picture of an Ochiame holding a staff in the Akan tradition, and we show the connection between these two, this function in the society and so forth. So let's look through that document. And again, if anybody has any questions or comments, you can post anything in the chat room. Of course, you have to log in order to post. And if you have any questions or comments on the phone line, just hit the number 1. So we're going to look at Ochiame Uhime, spokesperson of the sacred. This document, for the people who came in later, if you just go to the ojirafo.com webpage, ODWIRA, F as in free, O.com, go to the index page and scroll all the way down through the introductions and the various links. You'll see that we posted a number of recent articles. The one with the image of Tehuti and the image of the Ochiame, the spokesperson, standing there with the golden staff. This is the article we're talking about. So there's an image first in the article of the person with the staff, the Ochiame. He's holding the golden staff. He's standing next to the Ohini, which is the Akan term for king, Hini or Ohini. And so what we say, the above image is of an Akan Ohini, meaning king. Standing next to the Ohini is the Ochiame, the Ohini's spokesperson, holding an Ochiame poma, meaning an Ochiame's staff. In our Akan culture, one typically does not speak directly to the Ohini, for the Ohini is seen as divine, meaning the king. Those who would like to address the Ohini or the king speak to the Ochiame, the spokesperson, who in turn relays the message to the Ohini. The Ohini gives his response to the Ochiame, and then the Ochiame relays that response to the individual. The Ochiame is the mouthpiece or quote-unquote linguist of the Ohini. And then we show in the Asante Fante dictionary, Ochiame is a speaker, reporter, interpreter, one of the elders of a king, called a linguist, who in the councils has the office of speaker, being the mouthpiece of or the reporter to the king or the assembly. So when you see, if you went into a hemphier or quote-unquote palace, and you see the king sitting there, and you see the spokesperson standing next to him with a staff, if you wanted to address the king to the spokesperson, the mouthpiece of the king, and then he whispers to the king what you have to say, tells the king what you have to say, translates that, the king then whispers speaks into the ear of the Ochiame, and then he announces what the king says. And the same is true with the Ohima, the queen mother. She has her own Ochiame or spokespersons as well, and it's the same function. We also show the Ochiame also receives and deflects negative spiritual energy that may be directed to the Ohini by malevolent individuals. The Ochiame thus has critical political and spiritual function. All communication to and from the Ohini go through the Ochiame. And then what we show in the document, the term Ochiame in Akan, you will find in the hieroglyphic dictionary, when we show the images for this. Ochiame is Ochim, or Ochime in ancient Kemet, and it literally means to repeat, to narrate, to recount, to tell a story, and so forth. The teller, the herald, the king's herald or the speaker, the interpreter, the great recorder, the spokesperson for the king, Ochim, or him. And this is where we get Ochim or Ochiame in our Akan culture. Ochim A or Ochim Ye in ancient Kemet is the great A or A Ochim. And that is the title of Tehuti, the great reporter, recounter, one who repeats, mouthpiece of the king. So the same term from ancient Kemet, Ochim and Ochime, becomes Ochiame in Akan. And so we show that it's Tehuti's function as the spokesperson, as the mouthpiece. We go into a little bit more detail about that. We show later in the text, of course, Tahuti is called Bre Chiri Hunuwate and Akan, meaning the all-knowing, omniscient, wise one, the divine wisdom on the male side. Of course, Abrewa is divine wisdom on the female side, and that is Seshat, the divine female scribe, the divine goddess, Ntorot, or so-called Neter, or Ntorot, of divine wisdom. So you have Tahuti and Seshat, male and female. Tahuti is also called Sesh, which means scribe, and Seshat is the female scribe. So Tahuti and Seshat, the male and female divinities, Abosom, Orisha, Ntorotu, of divine wisdom. Ma'al and Ma'at are the male and female forces of divine law, which is the codification of wisdom, divine law and balance. But Tahuti and Seshat are the spokespersons and the divine wisdom itself. There's a difference between Tahuti and Seshat and Ma'al and Ma'at. And again, there's Ma'at, the divine goddess, Ntorot, of divine law and balance, and Ma'al, which is the male deity of law and balance. There's Ma'al and Ma'at. There's Ma'al just as important as Ma'at, just like Tahuti and Seshat dealing with divine wisdom. So we say the Ocheyame in the body is the pineal gland, the light-sensitive gland which secretes hormones, meaning directives, according to the dictates of the brain. The pineal gland is the physical seat of the Ak or Aku, which is the aspect of the spiritual anatomy of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African people, which governs our capacity for intuition, insight, knowledge, and so forth, called Nhumu and Ohu and Akan, of that which is real, genuine, true, spiritually and physically. This is why the cultivated ancestresses and ancestors are called Aku and Aku. So you have a pineal gland, that's the physical seat, and the pineal gland is a light-sensitive gland. When it receives light, it secretes melatonin, secretes serotonin, depending on what's needed. So it's a light-sensitive gland. It receives that light and transforms that light into directives for action for the body. That's the physical pineal gland. The spiritual energy around the pineal gland, the spiritual pineal gland is called Ak or Aku. Ak or Aku in ancient Kemet means illuminated. So the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, one of their praise names in ancient Kemet is the Aku and Akut, meaning the illuminated ones. The way they define it is the shining ones or the illuminated ones, those who radiate divine wisdom. So that's a title for them because of their function. So we cover that. The key here, and then we show some more Medutu with regard to that. The key here is Tahuti as well as Seshat being the spokesperson of the king. That court structure, not only it exists within the body, it exists within creation, and it's a replication of the created order. A couple of days ago when we did our presentation broadcast on Oboadie or Ptah, we were reading from the Minefer text, the Shabaka text, talking about the nature of Ptah, and when they talked about the heart and the tongue work together to create all kinds of things. The heart connected with Heru, the tongue was associated with Tahuti, and the heart and the tongue work together. So you have the brain. We talked about Ptah, the great divinity who fashions the universe, fashions the planets, sun, moons, stars, and so forth. In your body, Ptah operates through the brain. So again, we said the cerebral cortex, the white fleshy area, Ptah dwells in that region. And that's why his sanctuary in ancient Kemet is called Anefhech, or the white wall. Yes, there was a white wall building sanctuary that's painted white, and that's the sanctuary of Ptah, Anefhech, the white walls. But within the body, the white walls of the White House, the center of government is the brain, and the white walls are literally the Anefhech, the white fleshy area of the cerebral cortex, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere that Ptah operates through. Just like he's the force that fashions the sun, moon, stars, and so forth, takes the life force energy in creation and fashions it into specific forms to execute specific objectives. He operates through the brain fashioning your thoughts, intentions, which will eventually manifest through your behavior, fashions those thoughts into specific forms. Your thoughts, just like an image or anything else, is a specific form. It takes a specific shape. It's a spiritual entity. And once it's a spiritual entity, it has value. It has function. So when you have a thought or an intention, that's a spiritual force that has been fashioned by Patah. Your thoughts are in alignment with the Supreme Being, with Nyame Wa Nyame, Amenet Amen, those thoughts, those spiritual matrices that you generate within your spiritual brain. Those spiritual matrices have a magnetism. They have an aura. They have a magnetic field. Just like your body has a magnetic field, just like the earth has a magnetic field with the two poles, the magnetosphere, just like a magnet on a table has a magnetic field that you can experience when you get another magnet or you get some paper clips and move it around. Your thoughts as entities with the life force energy circulating through them as matrices are entities, and they have their own magnetic field. If you shape thoughts that are in harmony with order, then that magnetic field will affect you in a fashion which will push you and draw you and pull you towards harmonious behavior. Your actions will then be harmonious. But if you fashion thoughts out of harmony with divine order, then the magnetic field that surrounds those matrices will affect you. Your heart will therefore affect your desire, and you'll begin to engage in negative intentions and eventually negative behavior. So shaping proper thoughts and, of course, intentions is actually shaping a spiritual matrix that has a magnetic field that affects your physical body. And we talked about this on Monday, so you can check out that broadcast, and we touched again on it yesterday when we were talking about the NA, or the sound of the abosom, the nature of their birth names. As the spirits move through creation, they generate sound vibrations, and those are the actual names of the deities based on their movement through creation. So the key here is when you attune with divine order, and Patah shapes and fashions specific thought forms, it has a magnetism, it has an aura, it has a magnetosphere, and that magnetism affects your heart. And then your heart is filled up with energy. So you have desire that wells up within your heart, the desire to engage in certain kinds of behavior. If the desire is an expression of thoughts that are harmonious, then you'll have harmonious desire. Whether it's, you're hot and you need some water, you have the desire for water to bring coolness and balance to your body. That's a natural desire. If you want to engage in harmonious activity, engaging in nation building, engaging in harmonious interactions with your family and so forth, then those are natural desires, harmonious desires that well up in the heart region. That energy wells up in the heart region, and that desire is articulated through the tongue. So the heart is the king in your body, in the lower section of your body. From the neck down, the heart is the ruler. From the neck up, of course, the brain is the ruler. In the physical world, quote unquote, the heart in the lower region, that's Heru. Sitting in the center, he's the ruler, he's the king. Of course, the brain in the upper region in the spirit realm, Alsar is the king there, and of course, Alsar wears the tall white crown. Again, that's the cerebral cortex, the white fleshy area, the cap, the tall cap that governs that region. But the heart in the world, in the lower area of the world, is the center, that's the king, and then the tongue, which articulates the desire that wells up in the heart. The tongue enunciates that, puts verbal form around it. That verbal form, when released in the form of sound vibrations or ritual incantations, affects and moves matter, and also affects and motivates people, the spirits of people. So just like somebody can sing and the vibrations will break a glass, or you can hear sound waves and they can affect and break something, sound waves have power. So when we speak proper words in our ancestral languages, the sound vibrations is not just one or two words that are mantras. Of course, that's Hindu nonsense. All of the words in Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, ancestral languages have mantric value. So when we speak and release those sound vibrations, which are reflective of the desire that has welled up in the heart region as an expression of what came from the brain region, and we speak and put verbal form, proper verbal form around those desires and project that through sound vibration, not only do we affect matter, but we also, those sound vibrations are sent forth from us. They stimulate the ears and the spirits of other people who are connected to us and motivate them to move in a certain fashion. It stirs up and inspires them to move in a certain fashion, inspire or inspirits them to move and operate in a certain fashion. If there are harmonious thoughts, then it inspires harmonious interactions with other individuals and movements and work and so forth. If it's disharmonious thoughts, then it inspires negativity and it projects negativity. Of course, the person can deflect that, but if they're not, receptive enough, they may accept negativity. So this is what we're talking about. The Akan court structure with the king there and the Oshiyame there as the spokesperson is the same structure that you find with Tahuti as the spokesperson of Amen, the spokesperson of Ra, Seshat as the spokesperson of Amenet, the spokesperson of Ra'et. But then within your body, the heart is the king and the tongue is the spokesperson which articulates what's in the heart. And this is what the text of Ptah, the Shabaka text is talking about when Heru is associated with the heart, Tahuti is associated with the tongue, and they say the heart and the tongue create all various forms of activity and manifestation. All of that is associated with, in our culture, with GUAMU KASA, or public speech. If we're engaged in GUAMU KASA in a harmonious fashion, what we speak is motivated by what's in our own pra, our soul, our divine consciousness, as given to us by Inyamewa, Inyame, the Supreme Being, and then we articulate what the NANASOM and Samanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, and the Abosom have guided us to articulate, and when we release those sound vibrations, they stimulate the eardrum physically, but then the heart and mind, spirits of our people in a positive fashion. We transfer knowledge, we transfer energy through public speech. This is the nature of public speech. This is what we're talking about when we say GUAMU KASA. So it's not preaching, it's public speech. We're transferring knowledge, transmitting energy, which is a transference of knowledge. So, of course, some of that has been lost to a certain extent because people just follow the Christian model or the Muslim model or the Hebrew model, all this other nonsense. They go around with false doctrines, foolish information, go around speaking, charging up people's negatively conditioned emotions. When people are not negatively conditioned, when they hear that nonsense, they repel it. It's repulsive. But if we've been conditioned, which we've been conditioned in this culture to embrace false religion, pseudo-religion, pseudo-spirituality, pseudo-culture, perverse culture, then people who are teaching that nonsense, we get stimulated by it emotionally. Just like somebody who's smoking cigarettes. When you first smoke a cigarette, the first time you ever take that puff, you immediately begin coughing, your lungs reject it, you start coughing, wheezing, and everything else. But if you keep forcing that poison within your system, you force your body to develop what some people would call a tolerance. It's not really a tolerance. Your body is fighting back. Your body is saying, okay, this fool is going to continue forcing this poison in here. We're going to try to survive even though he or she is forcing this poison in here. So it appears to be a tolerance, but it's really a survival mode. If you continue to do that, then you change the polarity within your body, and now you begin to crave that which is actually poisonous to you. That's not a natural inclination. It's not a natural craving. It's an artificially grafted craving onto your spirit because you've negatively conditioned yourself for self-destructive activity. The same thing happens when we get false information. First, it seems nonsensical. Somebody says, this cracker in a stained glass died for all your sins, and you have to pray to him or else you're going to burn in hell forever. Nonsense. But then people keep drilling that into us as children, as adults, through this culture, through schools, through magazines, through music, through all various forms. And then we begin to incorporate that nonsense within us. And the next thing you know, we begin to desire that kind of misinformation. we become ill, we become diseased. So it's the same as someone becoming sick, having the flu, having a certain kind of virus. They become nauseous, they don't want to eat anything. You give them some food that is actually nourishing to them, that they would normally eat, and they try to eat that food, and all they can do is vomit, regurgitate it, because they can't keep it down. Something that would normally nourish them, they can't hold it in. They reject it. And when you get disease, that's what happens to you. When you get disease spiritually, accurate information, harmonious information, truthful information that would normally stimulate your spirit, since you've been negatively conditioned and you're diseased now spiritually, that information, when you hear it and receive it, you can't keep it down. It's repulsive and you want to vomit or regurgitate it and get it away from you. So somebody comes to you and teaches you something harmonious and truthful, you don't want to hear anything about it. All you want to hear about is the perversity, the lustful misinformation, that idiotic information, and so forth. So this is what has happened with our people. So people operate on the negatively conditioned emotions of our people, go around from city to city, stimulating those negative emotions. When people's negative emotions are riled up, even if there's a little bit of truth in what they say one true statement and 5 totally inaccurate statements, another true statement and 20 totally inaccurate statements. And at the end of the day, what they've done is just reinforce ignorance within the people. Then they charge people for reinforcing that ignorance, and people feel obligated to pay to have been reinforced in ignorance, reinforced in conditioning, false information that's been conditioned within them. And then they also may charge for books, CDs, a number of different things. And then they begin to manipulate people and try to force them to participate and become part of their organization, doing whatever it is. So this is how things have become corrupt. So when we get back to real speech, when you deal with the traditional culture, whether it's on the continent, and the court structure is a reflection of divine orders, reflection of the court of the divinities in the same position where Tahuti and Seshat are in relationship to the king and the queen mother, where Heru is in relation to the, Heru and Het Heru, the king and the queen in relationship to the physical king and queen in the world, and so forth. You'll find that not just in the Akan tradition, but you'll find it in the Yoruba tradition. You'll find it all across the board. That same divinely ordered structure, the position of the divinities and their function in creation, the way you find it in the body with the different organs and the way they interact is a reflection of that. And then externally in our culture, we reestablish and we replicate that order with the positions in government. We have, like we said yesterday, we have civilization. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, we are the only people to establish civilization, civilized society. Other groups of people have societies, but they don't have civilization. A civilization is a social order rooted in the divine order of creation. The only way you can get rooted in the divine order of creation is to be able to attune to the actual abosom that govern creation, the deities, the forces in nature that animate the sun, moon, stars, earth, mother, oceans, rivers, atmosphere, fire, thunder, lightning, and so forth, core of earth, mantle and upper mantle and crust and upper crust and so forth, the various aspects of the planet, these forces that animate these various aspects of creation. And as we can see in creation, creation is a harmonious creation. There are cycles that manifest in a harmonious fashion that you can measure and follow and get in attunement with, because the spirits in nature are embodiments of divine order. They are the organs within the great divine body of Nyame wa Nyame, or Amenet Amen, the Supreme Being. So if you can attune to those forces that actually embody order in creation, then you can attune to those forces, incorporate that harmonious interaction within your own body and your own spirit, and then you can create a society that is reflective of that sacred order. So we have the capacity to do that, and we establish civilization. Everybody else, the whites and their offspring, have established societies, but not civilized societies. So across the board on the continent as well as wherever black people have traveled in the world, including through the Musuo Kesie, the great perversity enslavement process. We still brought that culture with us. It's inborn, it's innate. Pre-incarnation, Abosom are assigned to us by the Supreme Being. Ancestresses and ancestors guide our spirits into a specific womb, to a specific blood circle, so we can come into the world and carry specific energy into the world. So that happens pre-incarnation. So no matter what happened to us physically, with the same spirits who have returned, the same ancestresses and ancestors who have returned through our blood circle, still connected to the same forces in nature. So we really can't lose the culture. If you can communicate with the Abosom, the forces in nature, if you can get possessed by them, you can do divination and communicate with them, and they show themselves to you. You can communicate with your ancestresses and ancestors, your grandmothers and great-grandmothers, whose spirits will come to you, whether it's in dreams, in the house, at the ancestral shrine, pouring libation outside, whatever you're doing. If you can communicate with your ancestresses and ancestors, which we can, then you can't lose the culture, because whatever knowledge you have lost in the present, they can show you that information, and you can reincorporate that in the present as well. If you can attune to the Abosom, the forces in nature, then you can't lose knowledge of ritual, because when they possess, they will do the ritual right there in front of everybody. And everybody will learn the ritual that had been done thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, decades ago, that had been quote-unquote lost. The Abosom will possess and do the same ritual in the same fashion and show you exactly how to conduct that ritual. So you can't really lose culture in reality. There can be a temporary memory loss, but when you reconnect with your own crowd, with your own ancestral memory, reconnect with your direct, NANASOM and Samafo, spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and reconnect with the Abosom, you can restore any aspect of culture that needs to be restored. So all of that is tied into what we call GUAMU KASA. That's where we recognize GUAMU KASA for public speech as a service to the community. And as a service to the community, we don't charge for GUAMU KASA or public speech. Just like Tahuti doesn't charge, Heru, and doesn't charge the community to articulate what Heru is bringing forth. That would be nonsense. So it is a service to transfer knowledge, transfer ancestral wisdom, transfer ancestral knowledge to our people in the present, in the flesh, live, connecting with people. That is a service to the community. We are servants in that sense, so we can't charge for that. It's a different paradigm. It's an original paradigm. It's a natural, normal paradigm, and we've been off on the misinformation, the nonsense. So this is what we're getting back to. So this is why we have that stipulation, as you see on the GUAMU KASA page, with regard to, number one, we have our presentations, workshops, training. They're for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. So if people, therefore, want to schedule a presentation and they understand that we present to our people only, that means holding an event in a private setting, typically. Sometimes you can have a public use facility, a public library, conference room or something, if you can, reserve that. Black-owned bookstore, black-owned health food store, or dance studio, or auditorium, or whatever it is. But sometimes if you have a specific kind of public use facility that anybody can use, and then you put information out saying that this is exclusively for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, then they'll say, hey, well, you can't use this facility because you can't discriminate. Well, then that's fine. We get a privately used facility, whether it's Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit school, business, or some places like conference rooms, other places that can be rented out for like $30 an hour or something like that. We get those, and then you can determine whoever you want to come into the place, and you can reject whoever you want to come into the place. So that's part of the process. We speak to our people and teach our people only. And then the second part of the process, the second stipulation is we do not charge admissions fees for our people or registrations fees for our people to come to our events. And the third stipulation is we do not charge a speaker's fee to organizers when they organize events. Sometimes we have our own events, and, of course, we just establish these events. Sometimes when we are going to events and they're not too far and we drive to these events that may be 2 or 3 hours away, like we drove to Philadelphia or Virginia or Delaware or New York or something like that, we may drive to these events so there's no expense there. If we go further out and we fly, the only expense typically that organizers would have to cover possibly is a flight, a travel expense, possibly. If we didn't have the funds to cover it at that particular time, but they wanted us to come to that event, to that city on a particular date, then that would be the only expense. So, but with regard to a speaker's fee or charging people $1,000 just for us to come and speak, or $1,500 for us to come and speak, or we've heard people charging $4,000 and $5,000 for them to come out and speak, actually giving misinformation about Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, true story, so-called history, culture, ancestral religion, nationalism, Pan-Africanism, people giving misinformation, charging people thousands of dollars to give misinformation. It's insane. So we don't do that. We don't charge a speaker's fee or per diem at all. And this is the way we are directed by our own cross and move and by the NANASOM and SMAPO to operate. So let us just want to check the chat room right quick to make sure there weren't any questions or comments there. And on the phone line, and for the new people who came on, we were just looking at the GUAMU KASA page and the Ochayame document. If you have a question or comment on the phone line, just hit the number 1 so we can see your hand is raised. If you have a question or a comment in the chat room, I know we have some guests in the chat room, but if you want to make a comment or question, you would have to log in. If you don't have a username, then you can create one very quickly in Blog Talk. It's just like signing up for a free email account or something, and you can easily tune in that way. So we want to look at, on the GUAMU KASA page, so you'll see the links to some of the events that we did, and you'll see the different cities we were at and the various dates. So what we did during the summertime, you'll notice that the flyers are different. So you have the section for the summertime between June 22nd, which was the first day of the solstice, and then the different events between June 22nd and September 13th. So that was basically the entire summer period. And again, we stopped on September 13th because beginning a few days after that was September 16th, and September 16th through September 22nd was our 7-day New Year's observance leading up to the first day of fall, Atem or Atemet or autumn. So we didn't have any events there. So when you look at the various events that we did in the summertime in Maryland and Connecticut, back in Maryland, Philadelphia, in different places, you'll notice the flyers are different from the events we did previously in the other cities. In the summertime, we were dealing specifically with NANASOM, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion. So every event that we went to, we were focused specifically on reintroducing NANASOM, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion. And we have had our publications. We focus on one hand on our identity as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people as established in our publication, Afuraka, Afuraikai, the origin of the term Africa. We talked about Maranechi, which is divine order, the 2 poles of divine order, which is divine law and divine hate. And then we also, of course, talked about the Kukutuntum, where we talked about the cosmological structure of creation, but also the fact that the various fictional cartoon characters who never existed, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Bilal, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Allah, Yahweh, all these characters are fictional. So and some other information as well. But we were going through that foundational information to reintroduce NANASOM, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion to our people in different cities. Again, giving out the free books whenever we could. And we did. We were able to, because with the support of the community, we were able to generate the funds to be able to give away a free copy of a book to everybody who came out. So that was the basis of the summer events. Previous to that, when we were doing different presentations in different cities, we were talking about specifically the Okra and Okrawa. And we have the book, the Okra Complex, The Soul of our Kanpo, is talking about the nature of the Ka and Kaet, the soul, the divine consciousness, which is key. Everything revolves around your soul, your divine consciousness. Ancestral religion revolves around your relationship with your soul, your divine consciousness. The deity that dwells in your head region that's encoded within that spiritual force is the function you have been given by the Supreme Being to execute in the world, the manner in which you need to execute that function so that you don't operate and create disorder in the world in the process, and the spiritual energy you've been given, the specific configuration of spiritual energy you've been given to execute that function. So you're given a function to execute in the world. You're given a blueprint on how to execute that function that's encoded within your spirit's brain, your soul, your craft, but you're also given a specific configuration of energy to execute that function. So again, if you're like an immune system cell in creation, then you're going to be naturally drawn to an immune system function within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. You'll uphold justice. You'll enforce divine order. You'll seek out disorder to destroy it, whether you're engaged in activity where you start a martial arts school or you're part of an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit military structure organization or security or whatever it is, you're naturally drawn to restore order, enforce order, uphold justice, stamp out criminality and so forth in a harmonious fashion, not based on the way they do things here amongst the whites and their offspring. So if you have that function and you're naturally compelled to engage that function, and that's the function you have to execute, you're an immune system cell within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, just like your immune system cells have their own function in your body. Not only are you given that function and the manner in which to execute that function, so that you do not, number one, have the function, but then the way you do it, you're causing people all kinds of harm and, drama in the process. You have the function, but then there's a manner in which you have to execute that function so that you can fulfill your role but not create disorder in the process. And you also come through a specific blood circle, so the manner in which you execute your function will be different than somebody who came through another blood circle who has the same kind of function, but they come from a different clan, different group. So maybe a Akan person has a specific function to carry out that immune system function. A Yoruba person has the same function, but they come from different clans. And their people have migrated to different areas in the world. And because of the way they have interacted and their trucery with one another, their expression of that function will be slightly different based on their spiritual anatomy and even their physical anatomy with regard to allergens and things that they can eat and consume where somebody else can't, because they moved to a different region and they've engaged the world in a different region in a different fashion. Their physical and spiritual expressions of that function in one group, which will be slightly different than the other group. So that's why we have to honor, and not just cliche, honor our ancestresses and ancestors. And when we say honor, not just praise them, but recognize their role and their value in our lives. Only they can show us how to execute our function in harmony in the context of the clan that we were born and incarnated through. So because we come through a specific clan, yes, we have an immune system function. We're attuned to that force in creation. For example, Benna in our Khan culture is called Ogun in the Yoruba tradition. It's the same deity, that same force that operates through the planet Benna that they call Mars, the abosom of war, hot metal, and so forth, upholding divine order, enforcer of divine order, upholding justice, and so forth. That force operating through the immune system of the body and the divine immune system in the great divine body of creation. You call Benna in Akan, Ogun in the Yoruba tradition, Ogun and Vodun and Heru Behudet or Bedeti, Bedat in ancient Kemet. But the way the Akan person, if he's a child of Benna, a child of that immune system divinity, because of the way he operates because he comes from a certain clan and because we migrated to certain regions and ate certain foods and interacted with one another in a certain fashion, the way he aligns with Benna to execute his function, Benna or Ogun, the Yoruba person from a different clan, he's still attached to the same deity. But because he came through a different blood circle with different experiences and the DNA is slightly different and the way they ate was slightly different and the way they lived in different places and mountainous regions are different, the way he aligns with Benna or Ogun will be slightly different based on his genetic makeup, his spiritual anatomy. Only the ancestresses and ancestors of your blood circle who actually mastered life as members of that blood circle can show you how to execute your function in the context of being part of that blood circle. That's why we must, quote unquote, honor them, meaning recognize them and align or attune with them and follow their guidance and their direction. They don't do the work for us. They give us the guidance on the best way to do the work, best practices, so to speak, harmonious practices, divine practices, so that we can execute our function ourselves. We can do the work ourselves. We engage in the behavior ourselves. We execute our life function ourselves, but we do it based on the proper guidance of the Nsamanfo, NANASOM Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, so we can execute that function in a harmonious fashion. So we're given a function, and then we're given a manner in which to execute that function that won't create disorder in the process in the world. Then we're also given a specific configuration of energy necessary to execute that function. If you have a fiery function, you're assigned to a fiery divinity, you have a fiery function in creation, the Supreme Being is not going to say, okay, you have a fiery function to destroy disorder and cancer cells in the great divine body. I'm going to give you some cool and watery energy and you won't be able to execute that function. So you're going to be aligned to forces or abosom divinities or rishas that have that fiery energy necessary for you to execute that function. Part of your crowd, your soul, your divine consciousness is not only the function, which is like the cerebral cortex, the knowledge of what you need to do, but then the cerebellum, which is in the back, governs motor movement, balance, equilibrium, power moves, and so forth. The specific configuration of energy you're given to execute that function, you need to know how to execute it, how to turn that energy on, how to invoke it, how to shut it down when you're done with it, and so forth, how to open and close, expand and contract that energy. So you need to be able to not only know what you're supposed to do and how to execute it, but you also have that energy you need to execute it. How do you open and close that energy? It's like the difference between somebody who's a paraplegic. They can have all the knowledge in the world about what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, the best way it needs to be done, and so forth, but they don't have the power to execute because they're paralyzed. You can have all the knowledge in the world, what we call the Nkra and Nkrabia, your divine function, the male and female aspect of your divine function. But then you must also have the power to execute, and that's given to you as well. And once that's given to you, you need to know how to open and close that energy. If you're a child of a fire divinity, how do you open that energy and invoke that energy within yourself and summon that energy so you can move forward and attack and do what you need to do? The cool energy, how do you utilize that energy, stimulate it within yourself so that you can learn how to heal people of certain kinds of diseases, whether you attune to plant life, mineral life, get the information, make a medicine, and pass it on to the person and heal the person. How do you open that energy? How do you close it, and so forth? So that's what we were dealing with in the book, the Okra complex, the soul of Akanfo. And it's not just focused on the Akan tradition, but when you talk about the nature of the soul, it cuts across all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral religious traditions. Everybody just has a different name for the same concept based on their language. So Okrawa in Akan, Ka and Kayet in ancient Kemet, Se Lido in Vodun, Orderi Inu in the Yoruba tradition, the Chi in the Igbo tradition, and so forth. So that's what we were dealing with on those numerous presentations, not in the summer, but prior to the summer, earlier in the year, we were going to different states and so forth. So now we have coming up, we will also be moving forward, and the subject matter for the next presentations coming forward. Unless somebody has a specific thing we want to focus on, we come to your city. But Maranechi, divine law and divine hate, the expansive and contractive poles of divine order. So this is what we will be focusing on in this particular season, October, November, December, leading up into the name, which is Cometi term for the winter solstice, which occurs around December 21st, December 22nd. So leading up to that, in October, November, December, we will be dealing and focusing on, in the cities that we go to, Maranechi, Divine Law and Divine Hate. Of course, we have the book, Maranechi, Divine Law and Divine Hate. And in fact, I'm going to put the link in here in the chat room right quick. No, let me see. Let me make sure it's the link is good. Okay. So the link is actually to the Nhoma page that we're posting up, and when you go to the Nhoma page, that page has all of the books there, including Maranechi, Divine Law and Divine Hate. So you can link there. So when you click on that link, you'll see a couple of things. You can go to the Maranechi link, click on the front cover, and it'll take you to the separate Maranechi page. And what you'll find on that page is a couple of things. In fact, if you click on the Okra complex page, as well as the Maranechi page, you'll find a couple of things. You'll find the front cover that you can click on the book and download the ebook version. You also see that we have the Maranechi book, as well as the Okra complex solo Bakamfo. We have the English version, and then we have the version translated in French. So one of the members of our network, Afuraitkaitnit.com, our social network, which is a private network that we own, that we pay for, which is separate from Facebook, that people you can join, create a profile. There are discussions, forums. There are people post videos, blogs, images, all different kinds of information, interacting with people of the same mindset and so forth. That's the Afuraitkaitnit.com. And in fact, let me just put that in the chat room as well, just so people can see that. It's Afuraitkaitnit, all one word, .ning.com. And we're going to put that in the chat room as well. So that's, hold on one second. All right. Okay, so that's in the chat room as well. So one of the members on our Ning site asked us, if they could translate the work. Of course, we said yes, because it's what we wanted. That's one of the things that we were going to be working on. So he translated the Okra complex book first, and then Maranechi, Divine Law and Divine Hate, and other books are coming forward as well. We're going to have all of the books translated. Of course, they're in English, but French, Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, as well as Twi, the Akan language, and other languages as well on the continent. Of course, some of our people were forced into English-speaking colonies. They only speak English, so they read the book. Some of our people were forced into French-speaking colonies, and they only speak French, and some of them have contacted us and they say, well, our English is not very good, it's hard to understand. Is it possible, can you translate the work into French so we can understand? And we've had that, and they're very appreciative of that. Of course, many of our people were enslaved in Spanish-speaking colonies, only speak Spanish or Portuguese, like in Brazil, or as well as like in Suriname, and some other places, our people were forced to speak Dutch, and in the Netherlands and so forth. So there are communities that are studying, for example, in Suriname, in South America, the Akan people maintain their traditions in Suriname. The Akan religion is called Winti, in the Suriname tradition. We actually posted a couple of articles on the Ning site, our social network, dealing with Winti, W-I-N-T-I. So they still worship the Abosom. They still deal with the Abosom of the 7 days of the week. They still speak dialects of the Akan language in South America, but they're forced to speak Dutch, and some of their descendants who've gone to the Netherlands, of course, they speak Dutch as well. They have contacted us and asked if we can get, possibly at some point have something translated. So wherever we have gone and been forced to speak these colonizers' languages, we'll have the work translated into these languages, but also in our own traditional languages like Tree and other languages as well as we get there. So that's why you'll see those two there. Now, when you click on the Marenechi, Divine Law and Divine Hate, and this is what we're going to focus on with GUAMU KASA, public speaking within the next few months when we're going to different places. It's key to understand that divine order is composed of two complementary poles, the expansive pole of order and the contractive pole of order. The expansive pole of order is law, which is also the same concept as love. In fact, the word law and the word love are the same word in traditional ancient Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit languages. The expansive pole of order, hate, is the contractive pole of order. There are deities of divine law, Ma'al and Ma'at, male and female deities of divine law and balance. There are deities of divine hate, Herubedeti, Herubehudet, and Sechima, Sekmet, Bena, and Abena, as they are called in the Akan tradition. These are the divine male and female Abosom, Orisha, Vodou of divine hate. The whites in our offspring, of course, try to teach us that hate is wrong, hate is evil, hate represents a low vibration of energy, and immaturity is just an emotion. Totally inaccurate. That's totally political because they don't want us to embrace the deities of hate, because when you embrace hate, you embrace the divine immune system and lymphatic system in the great divine body. Your immune system cells, lymphatic system cells, hate or reject, destroy cancerous cells and kill them to maintain order within your body, to keep the body healthy. They don't embrace cancerous cells and try to change them, they kill them. And it's the same within the great body of black humanity. The whites and their offspring are the cancerous cells in the body of black humanity. The only solution is extermination. We don't embrace cancerous cells. That means white Europeans, white Asians, white Hindus, white Americans, white Arabs, white pseudo-Native Americans, which are just Asians, white Latinos, white Latinas, and so forth, white Hispanics, all non-Afurakanu, non-Afuraitkaitnit, are spirits of disorder that incarnate that way and are divinely hated, divinely rejected. Spirits that do not have a cry, who repelled their cry, and they are spirits without a cry. That's the difference between us and them. So we go into detail about that in the book, of course. But ancestral religion revolves around that. Ancestral culture is rooted in divine law and divine hate. Culture is a way of life. The way you do things, the way you operate. There's certain things you do and certain things you do not do. Culture, our ancestral culture, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, ancestral culture is the divine acceptance, the law or love of order, and the divine hate or rejection of disorder. That is our culture. We accept law. We love order. We get in harmony with order. Those thoughts, objects, deeds, and entities that will place us in harmony with order, that is what we accept. And we reject thoughts, intentions, actions, things, objects, deeds, and entities that would otherwise place us in disorder. So our culture, our way of life, is the acceptance or the law or love of order and the rejection, the hatred, rejection of disorder and its purveyor. That's what culture is. And we're not taught that culture is comprised of divine law and divine hate. We're taught that, you're supposed to turn the other cheek and all this other nonsense. That's what the conqueror would teach you so they can control you forever. They're not turning the other cheek. It has nothing to do with divine order. The Supreme Being directs us to exterminate our enemies, not embrace our enemies and turn the other cheek to our enemies, but to exterminate our enemies. That has always been the case. That always will be the case. The Supreme Being directs the immune system cells to exterminate the cancerous cells, not to turn the other cheek and let the cancerous cells run throughout the body and kill everything in its path. That's insane. So that's the same thing with our culture. So when we understand that's the root of culture, and the root of culture is divine order, and divine order is comprised of law and hate, and there are deities of divine law or love and deities of divine hate, that changes the whole landscape, that changes the whole game, that reorients us back to reality. Because then the way we function, our thoughts, intentions, and actions will be rooted in that order. And everything we do revolves around that. It revolves around what are we accepting into our lives, what are we rejecting, how are we operating, how do we overcome obstacles, what are we accepting, what are we rejecting. That's what our lives are about, the culture, the way we move. So this is why we're focusing on that specifically with regard to GUAMU KASA in these coming months, so that we can make that a household understanding, household, reality. Maranechi, divine law, love, and divine hate. Many of our people who are engaged in a corruption of GUAMU KASA or public speech, not seeing it as a service to the community, a transfer of knowledge or wisdom directly from the ancestresses and ancestors to the community, are going around teaching people that, again, hate is wrong. We need to embrace everything and all things and all people, or even if people are engaged in self-destructive, ignorant, nonsensical behavior, we should just look over that and just try to unite anyway. That's nonsense. And that's where that comes from, a misguided understanding of what GUAMU KASA or public speech is, the role of Tahuti, the role of Seshat, in regards to articulating what is in the heart, what is coming from Heru, what is coming from the thoughts, intentions, and actions that are fashioned by Bata in the brain. That's a lack of understanding. When we get to divine law, divine hate, divine order, then you can't embrace cultural activities that are self-destructive. You can't rationalize self-destructive activity. It's not possible. So this is why we have to reestablish that kind of information. So let's look at the introduction in Maranechi. For example, let's scroll down real quick, and this is of course, the PDF version. Specific section I wanted to look at. Okay, so what we see here is we say the term for plan, order, or arrangement in ancient Kemet is set shed. This term can be found in the Akan language as nsheshe, meaning order and arrangement. The verb sheshe means to fix, to order, to arrange, while the noun version includes the in prefix, nsheshe. So Inyame wa Inyame nsheshe is thus the divine arrangement, the divine order. That's in Akan, of course. Inyame wa and Inyame is Amenet and Amen in ancient Kemet, so that's Amenet, Amen, Sesher. The names of the Great Mother and Great Father, as well as the term for order, arrangement, are the same from ancient Kemet to Akan, so we relate that piece. And then we say, talk about the two complementary poles, divine love, divine law, and divine hate. We talk about the origin of the whites and their offspring, their failed attempts to conquer us by direct warfare, while they began to engage the process of corrupting the ancestral religion to control the nature of the people. So, and we go into some detail about that and how it's say manufactured Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, the dance of Buddhism, Gnosticism, Kabbalism, Hermeticism, humanitarianism, various schools of psychology and so forth, to force these fake doctrines on our people to make us slaves. Then we say, which is key, it is a misnomer that the quote-unquote African was hospitable, really the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit person was hospitable and open to strangers as a part of our culture. This misnomer is political propaganda created and promoted by the whites and their offspring and perpetuated by brainwashed black people who are miseducated regarding our authentic true history, and culture. Various Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African societies routinely executed the whites and their offspring on sight without any initial conversation. This was a feature of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture for thousands of years. We were aware that these spirits of disorder had arrived to promote their agenda of murder, destruction, and control. We therefore did not give them a chance to begin that process. It was a minority of misguided Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, meaning Africans, who were engaged in empire building, who began to ally with some of the whites and their offspring against the counsel of our elders and eldresses and the deities via oracular divination. That's a key piece. Once we get beyond that misinformation that we've been fed about not only the nature of hate being evil and we should embrace and love all people and all this other nonsense, but some of the misinformation that extends from that is that, well, you know, in the African tradition, we were always open to people and we were very peaceful people and we embraced people. That's misinformation. Total misinformation. You have few incidences where people were engaged in that kind of behavior. You have other instances, many of which the whites and their offspring first showed up on the shores of our culture, and we came out with bows, arrows, and other weapons, shooting and killing them on sight before they had a chance to open their mouths for the very first time in the direction of our people. So we need to understand what our culture really is. Misinformation aside, and that misinformation has been perpetuated by a number of our people, including people who haven't understood the nature of GUAMU KASA. So we have to reestablish real trustery here. This is why we say later in that, at the end of that particular section, we will free ourselves from the social, political, economic, and military control of the whites and their offspring. We mentioned white Americans, white Europeans, white Hispanics, Latinos, Latinas, white Hindus, white Arabs, white Asians, white pseudo-Native Americans, etc., only when we reject without compromise all of them, their perverse doctrines, and the discordant ideas that they have and continue to spawn. So then we get into NANASOM, the nature of NANASOM, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion, and then we get into some more information in that introductory section, but those are the key pieces. We also show a particular section from the epilogue of the instructions of Ptah Hotep, written over 4,500 years ago. The instructions of Ptah Hotep, or the maxims of Ptah Hotep, or the precepts of Ptah Hotep, is considered the oldest book in the world. Of course, there are inscriptions and things that exist written by our people for thousands, tens of thousands of years old, 70,000, 80,000 years old. You find in various places on the continent. But as far as construction of a body of work that's, you know, a narrative, as far as in a book fashion, they would consider so far that's been unearthed, that's been released, that's been acknowledged, is the instructions of Ptah Hotep, a collection of work that's dealing with instructions, moral admonitions, teachings, and guidance by Ptah Hotep to his offspring. So it's considered to date the oldest book in the world. And in the oldest book in the world, there's a specific section that we actually quote from. It showed the Medutsu, the hieroglyphics, for the transliteration and the translation. the transliteration, so we show the Medusa, the hieroglyphics. Under that, those symbols, we show the transliteration in the language of Kemet. It says, Meru Ntoro Pu Setem An Setem in Masotu Ntoro, which in English means this deity or the god loves. The term loves is Meru. Hearing or listening. Not hearing is hated by the god. Mesut Ntoro means that which is hated by the god. Mesut Ntoro is the hate, Mesut of the Ntoro, the deity. That is divine hate. In the oldest book in the world, of course, you'll find it throughout the text of ancient Kemet, and you'll find it throughout Afuraitkaitnit and the cosmology of our people, all over, wherever we are in the world. That's always been a key component of our culture. It's the contractive pole of divine order. But some people have never heard of that, not because this is new information, not because it's, a new interpretation or anything like that. People following the whites and their offsprings lead, even if they're studying, quote-unquote, Egyptology or call themselves chematologists or whatever, still following the lead of the whites and their offspring leads to misinformation. So a text that all of them have in their libraries that's sitting right in front of them, somehow they're precluded from looking at the text of the mindset that they've been given by the whites and their offspring. They overlook things that are right in their face because they've been taught to overlook that. So they don't see, it says, Mesut and Toro, the hate of the God, the divine hate, and divine love in the same sentence, talking about what's important, what's harmonious, what the deity loves and what the deity hates, talking about divine hate. And the same is true of just all kinds of information that you find, and this is why when we talk about GUAMU KASA, public speech being a service to the people, if you see it as a service and the way we approach it, of course, not only do we, have public lectures, workshops, or whatever that are free to the community and give away the free books, but when you approach it as what it actually is, cosmologically, as a service, that means you have to attune to the actual forces in nature that govern you and be guided by them, attune to the ancestresses and ancestors, the NANASOM and Samafo that govern you, and be guided by them as well. And then you serve the people by transferring that ancestral knowledge directly to the people. If you think you know everything, then you can't be checked, no matter what people say out of their mouths, cliche about the ancestors and honoring the ancestors and so forth. The proof is in what is taught, what is released, and people immortalizing themselves on camera, on YouTube, and everything else, teaching things that turn out to be totally 100% accurate. So the proof is in what is being taught, what is being expressed. If you have respect for the NANASOM and Samafo, the ancestresses and ancestors, you will allow them to guide you, give you information, of course, and you receive that, but then ask them to show you where that information can be found, so then you can convey what they taught you. You can convey it to the community as a service to the community, and then the community can also get the information tangibly, get the references, and verify it for themselves. Then it will inspire them and motivate them to want to go to their ancestresses and ancestors and get that same kind of information from their own people. So they're not just getting it from you, they get it from their own people. Because all we are as servants of the community is we're just a vehicle to transmit knowledge, transfer energy, and so forth, to stimulate and motivate and generate that electromagnetic field and strengthen it so we bond together. But ultimately, people will have to attune to their own cry, their own soul, their own divine consciousness, their own people, their own ancestresses and ancestors who were with them before they even incarnated into the womb and have been with them ever since. Those are the people, those are the experts in the culture. Those are the only experts in the culture. Those are the people you need to attune with, get confirmation from. You can get information from people who engage in GUAMU KASA, people who teach and write and so forth. You can get information from them, but you need to get confirmation from your own people who are connected to you by blood. Okay, so it's only 20 minutes left. So only thing left that we have to do in that regard, and hopefully we've been able to articulate nature of what GUAMU KASA truly is and the reason why we move forward in the way we do with regard to the free books and publications. Of course, we want to get the information out. Of course, every publication, every book is a strike against the whites and their offspring, is waging war against the perversity that's been forced into the minds of our people, and we're destroying Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and everything else, Hebrewism, in the minds of our people every day. We've freed thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people ever since in 13,002, or so-called 2002, when we released the Kuku Tuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction. It has been, 12 years, and thousands and thousands of people have rejected Jesus, Yeshua, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, and have returned to their culture. So, of course, we want to get the information out. We don't want to hold the information ransom. If people don't have funds and they can't get the information, of course, if we have information, we have the Internet. People have smartphones, even in the poorest areas in cities and countries, and even in Afuraitkaitnit, in the poorest areas, people have cell phones and they have access to the Internet. We cannot hold this information ransom when all we have to do is post it on our website and hit enter, and people all around the world in our communities have access to it, and we decide we're not going to hit enter because they haven't sent us $10. We can't engage in that fashion. That's perverse. So, of course, we want to get the information out, but first and foremost, it is part of our function, and many of our people's function all across the board, whether you're parents, people who, direct people, guide people, young people, as well as other people who you're connected with. It's part of our function to transfer ancestral wisdom to those of us, those who are connected to us. And GUAMU KASA, in the true sense, public speech in the true sense, is that transfer of knowledge in a harmonious fashion based in a cosmological context. So hopefully we've been able to convey that with this presentation, just so you can understand, have a better understanding about the manner in which we operate. Some people have said, well, how are you going to give away these free books? That doesn't make sense. Black people need to learn how to value things, and you give things away, they don't value it. And the only reason people don't value ancestral culture, their own culture, is because they've been brainwashed not to value it. So putting a price on something, even if you have the capacity to give the information away, that's not going to make them value it. It just perpetuates the ignorance. If they were in their right state of spirit and mind, of course they would value it. Obviously, our people have been brainwashed across the board. That's how we were raised in this culture. And some of us broke away from the brainwashing, so we assist other people to break away from that comatose state as well. Just like we broke away from it, and we show other people how to break away from it also. And once they break away from it, then instantaneously they recognize the value in their own ancestral culture. They recognize the value in their ancestresses and ancestors. They recognize the value in the forces in nature that are connected to them and so forth. So this is the way we move in that direction. The final piece, as part of that, in connection with that service and that cosmological context of GUAMU KASA, of course, since we're talking about EGUA marketplace, we touched on this last week. Of course, we have the option as well, not only with the services to assist the community, substance abuse abstinence, domestic abuse neutralization, and so forth, trauma, intergenerational trauma, addressing that effectively through the context of our culture. But then we also have, many of our people are unemployed or underemployed, or engaged in, activities where they're generating money in a fashion they don't need to be doing. We should have a mechanism in our culture to address that need, of course. So one of the things that we have done, first, all of our books were in ebook format. We began to publish the soft covers. On one hand, people want to read soft covers. They want to be able to open them and highlight them, take them on the train, take them on the bus and things like that, share them with other people. When people see the books They may see on the front cover not only the vivid images from ancient Kemet and other cultures on the continent, but also saying on the front cover, it'll say in this book, we talk about how Jesus never existed and Moses never existed and so forth. That intrigues people. It stimulates their own cry. Their insumanfo stimulate them to say, hey, you need to get this, you need to read this. So people want to have the physical books in their hands. So that's one reason, of course, we release the physical books, but also, and make them, inexpensive, only between $8 and $11. But also, we have a component where those who would like to become self-employed by distributing our softcover books can do so as well. So we have that on the Nhoma page as well. So the same page where you can go and purchase the softcover books is the same page. You scroll down a little bit further. We have a video, 43-minute video, which is an orientation for those who would like to become Nokwadefo, meaning, which is our term for distributors. Nokwade means truth. Nokwadefo means those people who dispense or uphold truth. So that's our designation for a distributor. Instead of saying distributor, we say Nokwadefo, those who are upholding and disseminating truth. If you would like to become a Nokwadefo distributor with regard to our books, just simply watch that 43-minute video and you click on the button, order whichever books you would like. For distributors, it's 30% off the retail price, of course. So if you purchase, for example, one of the books, Madanechi, or say, for example, the Okra Complex is $10. You will purchase it as a distributor, Nokwadefo, for $7, and then, of course, you would sell it for $10. So you will make $3 every time you sell a book. If you got 10 of them and you went to work and 10 people purchased a book, or you're on the train, or in school, in college, or whatever, and you distributed 10 of them, you sell the 10 books for $10, you purchase them for $7, so you make $30 when you sell 10. So, and we share the shipping costs. We split that with you as well, so you don't have to pay for the entire shipping cost of us shipping the books out. So it's a very simple process. You just go on the website, you can check out the video, and as you're listening to the video, you'll see that we talk about people should be familiar with the information. So you can make the order. Say if you wanted to order 10 copies of the Afuraitkaitnit, the Origin of the Term Africa book, you can order that. Of course, you order 30% off. As you're waiting for the shipment for a few days to come, then you can be reading PDF version that's online, and you can be looking at the other books online as well. You don't have to master the information. You don't have to memorize the information. You just want to be familiar enough so that when you sell the book to people, you'll have a basic understanding of what's in the book. But of course, they're going to study and learn for themselves, and they're going to go on the website and study the videos and the broadcast where we have examined the text in detail. So they're going to get that detailed information, and you can direct them there. But at least you will be familiar. So that's basically all it is. You will go, pick out the books that you want, purchase the books, and while you're waiting for them to come in the shipment, you study, you read up on the information, and then you distribute. You will be working for yourself. You would not be an employee of us or representing us. You're working for yourself as a vendor and just purchasing wholesale and selling retail. Generating income for yourself if you don't have any income right now, or if you want additional income, this is a way to empower the community, have solutions for our community, empower the community in a positive fashion so that people can, generate income while they're empowering other black people at the same time. It also inspires other black people who may purchase the book from you to be entrepreneurial themselves, to engage in some kind of entrepreneurial activity, which they may have been thinking about for years but never moved forward on. But then they see that you're doing something as simple as, they ask you about a book and you say, hey, I actually have a number of copies of this. You can purchase it from me. They see you just generated some funds by doing something that you like, you enjoy, and they may decide and be inspired to engage in entrepreneurial activity themselves. And that spurs that entrepreneurial spirit in our people just, by a chain reaction, basically. So that's another reason we put that forward. So that was the last piece related to the GUAMU KASA So if you have any questions, of course, you can hit the number 1 or you can type something in the chat. If not, it's only a few minutes left before 11, so we don't have to really go into overtime. So we can end here. So basically, next week, of course, we'll be back on Joada on Monday, Akanfo NANASOM, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, at 9 p.m. We'll be sending out a notification for that. If you'd like to join our social network, the private social network, Afuraka-Afuraitkaitnit.ning.com, Ning.com. And, of course, that link is also on the regular ojirapo.com webpage. Our contact information is also on the ojirapo.com webpage, on the Contact Us section, the Bo Ago section or the Contact Us section. And also, if you do value the work, please go to our Nhoma page, the publications page. If you've been thinking about purchasing some of our softcover books, please do so. That assists us in covering all of our expenses with regard to even the network itself. We pay for the network itself, of course, and the different things that we engage in, the free services and publications and so forth, and everything that we're doing. Your purchase actually directly makes this possible because we don't have loans, government assistance and things like that. Everything we do is based on service to the community. If the community sees value in what we're doing, then the community responds by supporting what we're doing. And if they support purchase publications, if they see value in that and assist them, like in overcoming substance abuse or overcoming a number of different things and changing their lives, then they can see the value in that. They can transfer that value to other people. So everything that we're doing is totally supported by the community valuing the work that we are putting in. So if you value the work, please go to the Nhoma page. You can go today. You can go tonight. Purchase one or more of our publications. As we said, they range from $8 to $11. So some people may buy 1 or 2 publications, but if you were interested in buying, we have a deal for the 10 publications, any 10 publications, 30% off, 10 publications or more. So some people may buy 10 publications. It saves on shipping, but it's also 30% off. So you get 10 publications for $66 instead of $96. It's $66. So you're basically getting, each book is basically $6.60 with 30% off. We also have the deal, and that's a permanent option. It's not just a limited sale, but that's a permanent option. We also have the permanent option of if you purchase the entire 13-book set, it is also 30% off. So you get the entire 13 books again for $86, which is basically $6.60 per book. And everybody, as we said the other night, everybody who has received their 13-book set or a 10-book set in the mail, their shipment, they've been appreciative of the quality of the publications and, of course, the content of the publications, the detailed information, much information that people have not had or didn't know anything about, even if they've been studying ancestral culture or trustery for a number of years. We've been able to bring out information like divine law, divine hate, or the origin of the term yoga, or our text talking about more means dead when we give the etymological origin and cosmological origin of that term, or the origin of the term God, or fictional characters of the Bible, Quran, Talmud, all these different things that were not out, not published until we put that information out, as well as other information as well. So again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning in. Of course, join us on our Ning site. We're also on Facebook as Afuraitkaitnit, and we also have a Facebook group, Akanfo NANASOM, so you can join that group as well. And we will be back on next week. So again, please support our publications. We thank you for those individuals who have already purchased some books and sent us responses back and thanking us for the information and telling us that you've been sharing the information in your cities and regions and so forth. This is just helping us to get the word out, transforming our people. Once the minds of the people are reoriented, then the endeavors of the people will be harmonious. And then we can focus on Ancestral, a nation-building process. It doesn't take years to get there. People can reorient their mind in weeks, in days. And once they're reoriented, reconnected consciously with their Nsamanfo, NANASOM and Nsamanfo, then they begin to make decisions and fulfill their role in the nation-building process. Wherever they fit in, they'll fit in. If they're engaged in agricultural sciences, they'll move in that direction. If they're engaged in healing practices, natural medicine, procuring medicine from plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth, and healing our people and learning those practices, they'll get in there. They're dealing with a military structure, defense, and so forth, weaponry that has never been existed before, whether it's metal armament, digital, cyber warfare, chemical and biological warfare. People who are naturally inclined towards those kinds of things, engineering, they'll be naturally drawn to that because they've been reoriented to their culture and the abosom that govern them, that carry that kind of energy. Those who are dealing with institutionalization of our values, establishing institutions which transfer knowledge, transfer values, teach training in agriculture, training in military science from our perspective, teach training in curing diseases and so forth, institutionalizing our values and establishing institutions. Some people will move in that direction. Some people will move in the direction of establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence from our cultural perspective. So when we have a nation, we will be able to conduct ourselves and govern ourselves in a harmonious fashion, which is key. Some people will be naturally moved towards engaging in the development of textiles, of course, clothing we need, of course, and then people, the acquisition of land and the building of homes on acquired land, whether it's here in the West or acquiring that land on the continent and establishing a nation-building process there, or in the Caribbean, South America. So those various 7 major aspects of the nation-building process, people are naturally moved towards and inclined towards anyway. That's encoded within your crop. But once you get reoriented with accurate information, as we put forward in our publications, then people will start naturally moving towards a nation-building process and will get in where they fit in. So again, we thank you for your support. Yerase, please support our publications and contact us if you have any questions, comments. Email us on Facebook or on the Ning site or our regular site. Okay, we do have a quick question. Ojirapo, is there any way this could be written up so that those who are aspiring to spread NANASOM as you do could use the same format? Yes. So we'll be, on one hand, we've kind of done some of that with the videos. And if people who are on the Ning, in the chat room, if you want to continue to listen for the next couple of minutes after 11 o'clock, you have to call in. You have like less than a minute to call in, 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635, and that way you have like 45 seconds to call in, because on the chat room, the internet, it would be cut off, but the people on the phone line can still hear past 11 o'clock. So 657-383-0635, you have half a minute. But we probably won't spend too much time in overtime. But yes, on one hand, some of the videos that we have put out kind of established that, but we will have one of the publications coming forward will deal with not only ritual practices, instructional ritual practices for Ancestral Religion, dealing with the culture of ancient Kemet, which is the parent culture, as well as the Akan tradition. But we'll also have, for example, the Patah Sasatem is a curriculum, that can be used, that people can teach the culture to youth as well as adults. That's one of our books, Patah Sasatem. You'll see that on the website. So that's a way to transfer that information in 7 modules designed to be conveyed in 7 40-minute sessions, whether it's 7 weeks in a row or 7 days in a row, whenever you meet with people that you're connecting with, whether it's a after-school program or if it's, just adults, if somebody was a drug counselor or something like that, or dealing with domestic abuse or going to shelters or whatever you're doing. But TASA-10 is a curriculum to convey culture in a structured fashion in a way that people can understand the culture and incorporate that even if they've never been introduced. And for the people who have been introduced, it'll just deepen their knowledge of the culture and they'll get more, in-depth information. Okay. And you also had, you said the same could be asked of changing the mindset of our Oman, the community, with regards to economics with one another overall. Too many of our people are falling for that law of abundance BS. So, that goes right back to misinformation, people being colonized through incorporating pseudo-information. Their emotions have been compromised, and people are just, having emotional reactions to misinformation, pseudo-spiritual information, the secret and, the laws of abundance and these different things, whether it's praying to a fictional character, Jesus, and God is going to work it out for you, or pseudo-metaphysical individuals trying to put forth this misinformation, and people, they jump in with that, and they get a lot of people. And at the end of the day, the people end up spending a great deal of money, or even they just purchase one book or one DVD. Nothing happens, and they wasted their money. They're further, reinforced misinformation, and nothing has changed at all. So that's why we have to, again, that's why GUAMU KASA, in the proper sense, public speech is a service to the community as we transfer knowledge from our direct blood, NANASOM and Samanfo, spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and the NANASOM, as a service to our Oman, our community, the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community. Okay, so Yedase, we thank you for everybody on the phone line, everybody who tuned in. Contact us if you have any questions or comments about the information, this or any of the other information we have on the other broadcasts, publications, and so forth. And we will, do our best to answer your questions in detail. Yedase again, and we will reconnect with you on Joada Monday for Akanfo NANASOM, Ancient Authentic Akan, Ancestral Religion, Yedase and Yebeshia. We will meet again. What's up?